Okay, so this is the Bible study for Matthew chapter 27, verses 27 through 44. And the text says, Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand, then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. Hail, King of the Jews, they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests and teachers of the law and the elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him if he wants him, for he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. All right, so remember that you can download PDF copies of this Bible study at www.abqnaz.org/alive so that you can follow along with us. Man, if you've seen, the movie The Passion of the Christ, then even reading this probably still brings to mind some of the visuals that were there. And I remember that my wife just wept through that part of the movie. It was painful to watch. I think it would have been painful to watch if it was anybody, but it was painful to watch even more so that it was our Savior, that it was somebody who we know in a very personal way and love, and also the implication that we are the ones, honestly, that did this, that we're reminded of through the course of that movie as well. Number 1 says, what happened in the last study in Matthew 27, 1 through 26? Judas was seized with remorse, tried to give the money back, but they didn't take it. He said, this man is innocent and it's on me. And they said, what business is that to us? They didn't put the money back in the treasury, but bought a field, all of that. And then ultimately Judas, it says, hanged himself in the midst of the remorse. B, Jesus did not defend himself or answer the charges of the chief priests when standing before Pilate. That's true. C, Pilate's wife sent him a message saying, don't have anything to do with that innocent man. She had been tormented in a dream with regard to this and knew that this was wrong and wanted to protect her husband from being involved in this. D, Pilate decided to offer to release Jesus and gave the crowd a choice between he and Barabbas. They asked for Barabbas and shouted to crucify him. And that's spelled wrong. There's a letter missing there. E, Pilate washed his hands and declared he was innocent of this man's blood. All that's true. Number two, what happened according to 27:27 through 30? A, the governor's soldiers stripped him, put a scarlet robe on him, and twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. I don't know if this was normal behavior, if they just got to do what they want with somebody who was condemned because they were supposed to be dying anyway, or if they took license with this particular prisoner because um, but it seems that the torture was not just a physical torture, but an emotional torture, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. B, they put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. Yes. C, they spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. Yes. D, after they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. So let's get on with it now. Number three, what happened in 27:32 as they were going out, and I would say, and following 32 through 36. A, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. That's true. B, they came to a place called Golgotha, and we're told that that means the place of the skull. Yes. C, they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after he tasted it, he refused to drink it. So I've heard it said that this would have numbed the pain some and perhaps sped his crucifixion, and he chose not to do that. And of course, we're going to study this in the coming week, but what he did on the cross seems to have been as important, or nearly as important, at least in his modeling of a way to live and a way to die. What he did on the cross, his actions on the cross were almost as important as him being on the cross. I'll say it that way, if that makes sense. Obviously, the crucifixion itself, the need for the sacrifice, is very, very important. But Jesus modeled for us how to live all the way throughout, and the things he said and did while he was on the cross were very important as well. D, when they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Yes. E, above his head, they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Yes. And that was a continuation of the mocking, right? Number 4, what does 27:38 through 44 say about the scene on the cross? A, 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. And that's true. B, those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads. That's true. C, people said, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself, come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. So there's this sense that logically makes sense in their minds that if he really is who he says he is, then he would not die. Now we know that that death was an obedience to the Father, and that it was what needed to happen for the whole thing to be complete. And so he was who he said he was, and yet still let this happen, and that is shows even more humility. But that was very difficult even for his disciples to process, let alone these people that were looking for reasons to criticize and to not believe. D, people said, he trusts in God, let God rescue him now if he wants him. That's true. E, in the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. And I think it's the book of Luke, but in some of the other narratives, obviously we hear some interaction between he and the 2 thieves on either side of him, and their interaction with each other. That sort of brings some clarity to this. kind of summary or generalization of what was going on up there. Number 5, what is the significance of all of this? Wait, you're joking, right? What is the significance of the crucifixion? Now, I don't want to make light of the crucifixion. Obviously, I hope that's not what we're doing here. I don't think that's what I've done. And I have to be careful when I say something is almost as significant as the crucifixion, because the sacrifice that was made in the crucifixion, probably the most important action that has ever been taken in the history of the world. And so I don't want to make light of that. I don't want to pretend like that's not as significant as it is. But I do want to say that that's probably, when we read this text, our tendency is to focus wholly on that. And we've heard that message preached probably thousands of times. If you're have been in the church, you hear this. I struggle on Easter and Good Friday and Christmas, and I struggle with preaching because it feels like, okay, we got to preach the same sermon every year, and I want to preach something fresh. There's nothing more important than the message that of what Jesus did on the cross. There's nothing more important than the fact that Jesus came to earth and took on flesh. These are so significant. But I would say watching how Jesus did it has a significance all its own. So that Jesus did it is one thing. But sometimes we focus so much on that Jesus did it that I think we don't pay attention to how Jesus did it. And so the significance of what happened while Jesus was on the cross and what happened before Jesus went to the cross when they were mocking him, I think that matters, and I think we skip over it. And I think we don't, because he's Jesus, we have a tendency, like, we're not supposed to put ourselves in his position, it seems like, in so many cases. But I want us to put ourselves in this situation and consider what we have done. So B says, are the insults and challenges true? Are they logical? Jesus doesn't respond. Maybe he just couldn't. Like, how do you respond to, being mocked as the king of the Jews? How do you respond to being told to come down? If you're really the Son of God, come down. That's all logical. That makes sense. But he could. It's not that he couldn't. And it's not that these are true. This is not a true answer, but it's something for us to consider. He could have come down. In fact, he tells Peter that in the garden. He says, I could command, 7 legions of angels? I don't need your sword cutting off this guy's ear, because if I wanted to stop this, I could. So we know he could. But he didn't. Why didn't he? Not because he wasn't the Son of God, not because he couldn't, but because this was the will of God that he had already settled with the Father in prayer in Gethsemane. So he had already decided to do this thing that was going to be hard. And therefore, in the moments when it seemed to get harder and the degree of difficulty was escalating, he did not back down and say, well, what they say makes sense. Maybe I should. Maybe I should just show them that I am the Son of God. Most of us might have had a harder time with these insults and challenges to our pride than we had with the beating. But Jesus has already settled this in conversation with the Father. So I would say this: how many times has somebody said, when we're feeding on Sunday morning, but we don't do things exactly the way they would like, you're supposed to be Christians? How many times has somebody, and by the way, they call us terrible names. It gets worse than that, I think, sometimes. I know that some of our folks have said, I know that Jesus has changed me, because if he hadn't changed me, then something would have come out when that person did that. The amount of humility that you have had to receive from God to be able to stand and hear those accusations, which you know are not true, without fighting back, without arguing. And I know, because I've been tempted to argue. I've probably argued at times with folks that have been attacking me and criticizing me and accusing me of not being who I should be before God, when I know I'm exactly who I should be before God. And I know that the reason that I'm making this decision is actually for their good, despite the fact that they think I'm the devil because I've made this decision, or because I've said no to them. That it's ironic, because it's not about me at all. The whole thing is supposed to be about God and about others, about their good. But when they turn the insults on you, it starts to feel like it's about you. And if I let that happen, then my pride rises up, and I got to show them. I got to explain it to them. I got to help them understand. They're not going to understand. They're not thinking logically. They're accusing on purpose. They're trying to get a rise out of you. And by the way, that's what they were doing to Jesus too. And so, we're not being hung on a cross, and we're not being accused even at the level, anywhere near the level that he has been accused. And yet our pride wants to rise up in those moments when we're serving God and doing work in the church. And I would just say, Jesus is our model. If Jesus could withstand these accusations, this mocking, and not feel like he had to stand up and prove that he is the Son of God, then can we withstand a little bit of criticism on Sunday morning breakfast because we asked somebody to get out of the shower when when they're spending 3 hours in the shower, and little kids may be going to the bathroom because they've taken too long, and they're going to go see a naked person in there? We have good reason for the rules that we have. Does somebody else see those reasons? No, sure they don't. Do they need to? No, they shouldn't need to, because it's we're the ones that are stewards of this facility and the body of Christ that meets here, and this community for that matter. And so we don't have to answer to them. We don't have to prove it. But man, the pride wants to, right? The pride wants to explain it, to deny that we're ungodly. And we need to look at Jesus. We have a model who went through way worse than what we're going through. And we can look to him and respond accordingly. We hear things like this while we are doing the will of God. How do we respond? How do we respond? Jesus not only sacrificed himself on the cross, but he also modeled for us the response that exemplifies the will of God even in our lives. And so, this is the kind of thing that, we can spend some time talking about the sacrifice that Jesus made for our sins, and we should not make light of that. But I feel like this is the part. Jesus called us to follow in his footsteps. Jesus called us to lay down our lives for others. And honestly, sometimes the physical beating seems easier to take than the hits to our pride. And so I would just challenge you, respond as Jesus responded. Follow in the footsteps of Jesus.